Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting, extraordinary meeting of Scrutiny Committee. We've got apologies from the Chair and the Vice Chair, so our first order of business is to elect a Chair. So do I have any nominations for a Chair? Councillor Sands?
Matthew Ford McAllister.
Is that seconded? Lovely. And all those in favour? Excellent. Anyone against? No other nominations for any other chairs? No. Welcome to the Chair, Councillor.
Right, thank you. So we have apologies from Councillor Vaughan Thomas and Councillor Caroline.
I've got Councillor Vaughan Thomas, Councillor Driver, Councillor Francis, Councillor Cadder, and Councillor Princey, and we've got Councillor Sue Mike Sands, and Councillor Champion. Oh, and Councillor right here.
Yes, because Councillor Ackford has said apologies.
Okay.
Thank you. So, do we have any declarations of interest from any committee members? Councillor Harrington.
Thank you. Yes, I do work for social services and social workers, so sometimes my role can mean that I do have direct contact and work directly with refugees and asylum seekers. I don't work for people.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Sands.
Is it relevant that one of the asylum hotels is in my ward? I mean, I don't have any interest, but
I wouldn't suppose it's an interest that you have, unless you own it. Anybody else? No? Cool. So we shall move on to the first order of business, really, and the only substantive agenda item, which is the review of welcoming refugees and asylum seekers to Norwich and overcoming obstacles to their smooth integration. We did have a report produced by officers. Did anybody want to deliver to that report, or did we want to go straight to some of our community groups?
Chair, I wasn't planning on formally presenting the report, which I hope basically recaps some previous discussions. I was just going to update on a couple of organisations that I know members were hoping to be present tonight, if that's okay?
Yeah.
So I did get them out earlier today, so apologies that came out quite late, so you might not have had a chance to see it. We were hoping that a few other organisations would be present tonight, so we're hoping that people from the Royal team will be present who previously indicated they would be able to attend, but unfortunately decided not to on this occasion. We have spoken to Serco and their subcontractor in the region of Cromwood. Unfortunately, those organisations essentially said they work for the Home Office and any issues that give them, obviously we can discuss with them through various forums, but they essentially report to the Strategic Migration Partnership. They've indicated if we've got any matters arising from tonight, or any particular questions we want to put to Serco and Cromwood, and the Strategic Migration Partnership have indicated they would take such questions. And then finally, we've also discussed with a couple of NHS bodies about their attendance, and they have indicated that they would report to the Norfolk Health and Scrutiny Committee. And unfortunately, Councillor Princey isn't here tonight, but if members potentially have any matters they'd like for NPOS to consider, we could perhaps make that as a recommendation.
Thank you, Leah. So, with that in mind, we do have apologies. Go on, Councillor Gavin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It was just that potential recommendations put there to note to the journals, but also the set of questions that exist that were sent through to people from the board team, potentially several that they've indicated they won't answer. Can I suggest again an early recommendation that that set of questions which are exist in writing already, circulated to all members of the committee, added to and discussed, and then forwarded on to people from the broad team for written answers.
That's something which will park to recommendations, but I see no reason for objections unless the committee members wish to. So with that in mind, I'm just going to look over to our guests who are here. It would be really excellent to hear from yourselves about some of the positives and also negatives of supporting the refugee community within Norwich. And if you could just take 5 minutes to introduce yourself, what your organisation does, and to give any thoughts on essentially any improvements that are needed, but also things which are done reasonably well, that would be really appreciated. Just so that you're aware, we've all discussed in our pre-meeting that we want you to be as much of the part of this meeting as any councillor here. The only thing that you won't be able to take part in is any of the discussion around recommendations. But the discussion before that, the debate about what we should be doing, etc., you're fully welcome to take part in that. So please feel free to indicate and take part. If I don't see you, then please start waving frantically because I can't see everybody when I'm looking around the chamber. So if I start with Mr. Dan.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm Abdul, I'm a district cross working for the refugee support service. We deal with asylum seekers, homeless people, refugees. Do you want me to go through the quick things? Yeah, alright, thank you very much.
Please feel free to use your time to focus on what you think is most important.
Yeah, so basically, I think the sentiment of refugees is positive, but we need to improve the parts that need to be improved, especially people in the hotels. We've got some complaints from families, especially in Norwich Hotel. They think that it's not fit for purpose. Also, we've got an email from one of the hotels asking for some equipment for children during the summer. I think this is very important for to look at and discuss. Also, we've got some good news about the activity that happened during this month, that people were welcoming refugees facing the other side. And also, we need to discuss how we can improve the experience of refugees and asylum seekers. Most importantly, we have got easy communication with people from the council and how to facilitate communication and get not this like formal communication but more friendly. Yeah.
My name is Kate Cook and I work at Norwich Integration, and we have been supporting refugees, migrants, asylum seekers for close on 20 years now. I'm too young to be doing that for 20 years myself. I think I don't know what Andrew has said. Anecdotally, I think there have been some teething problems with the hotels with regards to activities. There haven't been enough activities. I think that there have been some measures in place to improve that. There have been some issues with food, but I know from my perspective, our participants that has improved of late. I think there are not enough activities still going on, and from my perspective, I think the collaboration has worked really well with our counterparts. We work together to try and make sure that there are things going on to highlight the activities within our own organisations. And
from my point of view, I feel that we have a good relationship with the people reporting, and we're able to make suggestions, recommendations as to what participants want. We have a shop currently on at St Giles, and that's run by people with lived experience. And they have a very good relationship with many participants in the hotel, so they're able to articulate what's needed, and they're able to pass that along. So I would argue that we have found that there are measures taken by people for to try and put right some of the things that are wrong. And I think there have been some intents and some aims in that direction. I still don't think there is enough in terms of activities, but then I think that's where we all sort of collaborate to make sure things are going on. But I'm not sure there'll ever be enough going on for people that are essentially in a room 24 hours a day. So we'll do the best that we can in circumstances. But there needs to be a better and more rounded activity program. Thank you for that.
Hello, my name is Beatrice Marot, I'm the coordinator for the Bridge Plus. So at the Bridge Plus, we provide information, advice, and advocacy support, and we work with people who already have refugee status, just got refugee status, have been here for several years. Some of them may even be British nationals, but still find it difficult to, whether it's accessing local services, understanding UK systems in general. So that's really what we do. Our core work is around welfare benefits and housing. So we don't have direct links or contacts with people who currently are asylum seekers and living hotels or other asylum seekers. I should also mention we don't directly work with people who came through resettlement programs who are supported through the people from the road team because they will be duplication there. So yeah, just want to mention who we don't work with. So in terms of people we see people from over 40 nationalities. Obviously, a lot of people from migrant background or refugee background get on fine with their lives. We don't see them often or not at all. People we see are people who are still struggling with lots of things, and of course, post-COVID, cost of living has made things very difficult for people. What I guess we can bring in terms of our experience today and in relation to Norwich City Council is the work we do with people in relation to benefits advice, or benefits advice, but also access to social housing. And I think Andrew talked about communication. I think that's for us where the key issues are. There is often, unfortunately, a lack of communication, especially in relation to housing. With welfare benefits, actually, we have, I would say, a smoother relationship in terms of advocates, as advocates with our service users. So yes, and I think also, the whole digital by default agenda has made it very difficult for people who have some English, can communicate, but really benefit from face-to-face interaction. So I think that's also where things have been more difficult, I think, in relation to the council for people from ethnic minority, migrant backgrounds in general, but perhaps especially for people who are from refugee backgrounds. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And Mazzy.
Thank you for inviting us. I'm Rasha Ibrahim from the Zena Project. My background is I've been asylum seeker and refugee recently. Not recently, but yeah, refugee status. The Zena Project is a new CRC. It started last November. The main idea for it is to help asylum seeker and refugee to develop work experience as is considered when they come from home and wait for their decision to have refugee status is considered that. and as well to have their well-being and mental health. So, and provide and direct them to the right organization. So we are back to the Zainab Cafe, which is supposed to be before the Zainab Cafe. And we are unfortunately now we looking for another space. I think that the main things, as Abdul said, there is a lot of problem about communication, and as well there is a lot of barriers like language barrier, culture barrier, and as well a lot of our service users that are not really taken back home. So for them, it's like a big challenge and a big that they can go. And as well, we have lots of asylum seekers recently came to Norwich, and the services and the organization we found it really difficult to kind of co-op up all the numbers and give them the different services that can be given. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point, I know you're from the same organisation. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so myself and Rasha set up the Zainab project, as Rasha said, to bridge the gap and give people work experience and also integration skills as well. So we've also been working with the local police, the NHS and potential services, and we're going to sort of continue to do that and provide services so that we can provide integration workshops with our services. So we mainly work with people from the hotels, and I think the integration skills is so vital because it's such an alien environment to live and be faced with a lot of forms, formalities, and all of that is in language. So all of those things are a barrier. I just wanted to touch on again, I know Pinky said it was, but the main issue that we have from our service users is the food and nutrition in the hotels. Obviously, I know we can't talk about individual cases, but we do have people who are using our services to cook food for their families because their families are not getting enough nutrition, and some of them are family members are actually poorly because of that. We have those, but I think it's been said that the services are improving, but we still have people come to us in similar situations. So that's really what I wanted to add to it. So thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
Brilliant. And Ms. Woods, if you want to say something about City of Sanctuary.
So I'm from Norwich City Sanctuary. I'm the coordinator for City Sanctuary, and our main purpose is to foster a culture of welcome within Norwich. So we work with organisations, all of these organisations are part of our steering group, and we work with organisations across the breadth of Norwich, encouraging them to come welcoming towards refugees and asylum seekers. So we have theatres, we've got the university, we've got libraries, the museum service, we've got a lot of schools, we've got schools of sanctuary, all sorts of cafes, all sorts of organisations have joined us and gone through our awards process. And the thing I would probably mention is we've been working with Norwich City Council in the past to try and work towards you becoming a council secretary. But I know now that the leader and deputy leader left, so that's kind of, I'd be quite interested to be able to pick that up for the new leader if possible, because there is nationally there's a whole network of local authorities who have joined us and are working towards becoming councils of sanctuary themselves. So there's a network that's supportive of councils who wants to do that. And going through that process often sort of facilitates looking at some of the issues about communication or some of the things that we raise in private charities. So that was something to be good to be able to achieve that.
No, that's really helpful, and we'd like to hear more about that during our discussions, I assume. So before I come to any questions or anything, I'm just going to say that obviously we've been let down by some organisations, which is deeply disappointing. However, I know that there's a lot of ideas that committee members have, there'll be lots of ideas that you have, and there will probably be some questions that committee members may well have for some of you so that we can get a bit of a better understanding. We know this isn't necessarily the type of forum that we're used to, so if anyone is uncomfortable with answering any questions, then please let me know. I'm sure that it's probably going to be the case that questions aren't directed specifically to one person. But if there is anything that you want to put forward, please try and grab my attention. And please act as if you are part of the debate like everybody else. So I'm just going to open the floor to any councillors who want to suggest any ideas, ask anything about the report or to any of our guests. So I saw, first of all, I saw Councillor Osborne, then Councillor Wright, Councillor Sands, Councillor Chapman, thank you, and Councillor Galvin.
Thank you for coming. Firstly, just to echo what Councillor Harris said about the disappointment that people from Quality and Serco aren't here. Hopefully we can get more better engagement with them in the future. One of the things that came out in sort of that everyone said was communication with the council. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about what impact that has, and some examples of that, and how you think that could be improved. I should say also that it's something, that's not a surprise to us, it's definitely something that I've picked up, I'm sure other councils have picked up as well.
Thank you. So in terms of communication, broadly speaking, I think what I mentioned about the difficulty to have face-to-face interaction with members of staff at the council. I think we did raise concerns before COVID when the new customer centre was the way it is now, much more digital. We did raise concern about that. And then of course COVID happened, so it was changed anyway. But post-COVID, yeah, I mean, as an example, only a few days ago, someone who's got their situation looked at by the council in terms of housing risk of homelessness, had a notice of eviction to show to the council. She then came to our offices, fortunately we're not very far now, and just at the Charity Centre, and said, I tried to go there and show them, but I was told I needed an appointment. So, it's the kind of, and we have several examples, it's not just the odd one out. So that's a concern. For example, in the report, there's quite a bit around interpreting and access to interpreting. But yes, of course, that's very important. We strongly advocate for that. But the issue also is for the person to actually speak to someone in the first place to get to the situation where they can ask for an interpreter if they need one. So that's what we see. And I would say we see this more in relation to housing and homelessness cases. So the other, big issue we see in relation to this is as organizations supporting service users, and we have third-party consent, on record with Norwich City Council. The issue we see is someone, applying for homeless support, going through the process, but there's really a lack of communication with both the person and the support service, whether it's us or shelter. And we are very obviously aware of everyone's time, and everyone is under a lot of pressure. So we don't bombard, the housing officer with, incessant emails or creating watch after that. No, we were joined up for this. And yet, it's very difficult in many cases to get any update on someone's situation. And what we see is the service users, their mental health, going down speed because they're just not getting any news about their situation. So we feel often, unfortunately, people are left in limbo. And I would say, in terms of housing, it's got worse since COVID. Yeah, that's our experience. Thank you.
So, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pick up this piece of the report on housing, which talks about food, and actually food has come up for a couple of the introductions there. And the report talks about sort of religious and cultural needs not being met for food. But I'd like to give you an example of a conversation I had recently, where I was approached by a group of young men at an event, and they wanted to talk to me about the food situation they're experiencing in a hotel. They're from Ethiopia and Eritrea, and they were saying they were being made unwell by the food. And we sort of teased out a bit of a discussion, and I think we got to the conclusion that probably it was the lack of so they also used Indira bread, which is made with teff flour, which is gluten free, and of course perhaps what they're not being offered is something that means that. Is that similar? Does that strike a chord with what you're experiencing in your various roles? Thank you. And actually, are the providers able to take on board anything? Maybe they can't provide the specific Ethiopian diet, but can they be creative about it and look to providing a gluten-free diet, which maybe deals with some of their health issues?
Yes,
Thank you.
I think from our point of view, because we are food-based, so when we were working out of the feed on Hall Road, we were providing our services with vouchers for there's a community supermarket next door, so we were giving them vouchers so that they could actually buy in their own food. But again, that was all very basic. And even if they were to buy in their own food, they've got no facilities to cook, which is another barrier for them. But in terms of, so we had a Sikh family who were unsure whether the food was vegetarian. And then if anything was cooked as vegetarian, it was very small and the same thing every day. And then we've also got a woman at the moment who has said about her son is very poorly and he actually comes to school through malnutrition. So she's actually coming to us to cook food for her son. So I think, it seems to be a diversity in the diet and also just a lack of asking maybe services what they need as far as we understand.
So perhaps possibly they're attempting to make take a one-size-fits-all approach and not recognising that simply doesn't work in life.
Yeah, that's what we can see.
So I've got Councillor Channing next.
My question was pertaining to communication primarily, which has been partially answered. But if I may, there were several references to, for instance, the lack of summer holidays coming up, and you're going to have children in a hotel, there's no facility. How are you communicating that, and are those needs being met at all, or is that just pie in the sky, sort of, we would like some activities?
Question. So basically, we got email from the person coordinating things with the hotel, asking for facilities for the summer, and that I think was sent to all organizations in Norwich also. So we're coordinating with people with their other services from the Red Cross and to see how we can make that as well. Personally speaking, I think it's taken for granted there should be something available for children there, and anticipating that the summer is coming. So we're now 1 week in that. So why don't we have that already? So why don't we have this email? and most of the people answering this email, they might be on annual leave or so. As responding to that will take at least 1 month, and that month the summer holiday is already over. So this is their communication. So if we facilitate communication faster, easier, without, I mean, also, do I have to be all the time formal? It's we're supporting service users who think that formal means authority. And authority means something that is frightening for them. So what we try to say, to break this ice between us service users, and we try to break the ice between us and the other government bodies so that we work for the favor of refugees and asylum seekers and their families. And about the food, it's not only about the dietary requirements, it's about health issues sometimes. And I'll give you an example. A service user coming to the Red Cross say, I have diabetes, I can't eat this, that, okay, we send email 1, 2, 3. The answer, all right, leave it with me, all right. After 1 week, 2 weeks, nothing changed. Why is that? So some of my colleagues have now created, I think, I'm trying to break these barriers, create some barriers, not to write emails to some of the people, yes, why this is what we need. Why don't we have like workshops, meeting together, face to face, and this is the problem. All right, why do you deal with it this way? How would you like to solve this problem? This is what we would like to have. Just more face-to-face communication, more workshops. So the ice that's built over like 7 months now, and I think this is more related to British Red Cross and other organizations. I'm not sure about that, but because the British Red Cross is basically has a auxiliary role on behalf of asylum seekers. When I get a response that it's not the Red Cross job to do this. Why should I respond? What do you think I should respond to that email?
Just to say we had to sort of have respect as well.
That's helpful to know. So next I've got Councillor Sands and Councillor Gowden and Councillor Haynes, and I'll go to Councillor Osborne after that.
Thank you, Chair. Some of what I've got to say is sort of really touched upon already. I mean, equipment for children over summer activities. Do you have a list of the sorts of things you would need or would like to be able to do? Because that would be a tremendous help. Then we can perhaps chase up elsewhere. And certain, there's the various business organisations that bid and all this sort of stuff who should be becoming involved in this sort of stuff. And not just for children, of course, adults as well, because the other hotels in my ward, I know that's all adults, and often they are scratching around for things to do. I know lots of things have been donated, but perhaps the wrong things or not enough things. So I'd like to know exactly what's needed, and perhaps from the people themselves in these places. And also what concerns me is, again, the question of food. I mean, the Home Office in Serco is supposed to be running the hotels, and it strikes me that they perhaps are not making an adequate budget available to supply the food that's needed in the hotels. Because with an adequate budget, then of course someone can go out shopping and order the right sorts of things. So who is responsible for the budget? It's a real shame Serco isn't here, because we'll certainly have a big role in this. So I'd like to know whether or not the budget supplied in hotels is adequate for what's being provided.
Yeah, I can answer the first 2 questions, and no one can answer both questions. Maybe I'll be able to answer that than me. About the facilities, yes, the email lists what they need, and I'll forward that email to Alex. And so there are lots of things that require. Some of them are accommodated now, so they don't need to accommodate. On the next question, what is needed? I think what is needed are asylum seekers are usually asking for clothes, and they come to the service asking for clothes, and they sometimes complain about they are or they get second-hand clothes. Why is that? They think it's a stigma for them to get second-hand clothes. Why don't we, for example, ask some companies who can offer like new clothes? Well, let them have one pair, two pair of jeans, new jeans, trousers, boots, anything that's feel they are welcome. If I want to welcome my guests, do I give them second-hand thing or new thing? So this is a suggestion. It might be hard, but it's achievable.
And I've got Ms. Uber wanting to add to that.
Yeah, I will just add as well as Abdul said, it's in our culture, it's a shame to wear something second hand. So they found it really tricky, and as well, all they've been through is really sad and difficult for them, and they thought that when they come here they will find a lot of help, and that's a bit shocking for them. And at the same time, about the activities, I think from our point of view, the hotel is quite tight and it's not safe for the children because the family one is just the road. It's not safe to have any kind of activities in there, and inside is quite small. So any kind of communication about what activities going outside, and if there is any transportation available or any bus ticket, because it's far away for them to walk, and as well the trust for the family to leave their children all by their own is very difficult. So there is a lot of elderly and they got health problems, they cannot walk far distance.
That's really helpful. And I'm just going to bring in Ms. Cook and then Councillor Giles, who seems to want to add to this, and then I want to get to Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, following on from what Rashid said, we run a summer programme. We do it every summer at New Routes, and we have made that summer programme available to the Norwich Hotel and families at the Norwich Hotel, and we're providing them the transport so that they can get to activities. So, as an example, we might have a trip to the beach or rounders at Euston Park. But we make that available to the Norwich Hotel and other relevant activities available to the men-only hotels. So there are things going on, but that's us sort of doing activities that we ordinarily do anyway, that we haven't invited them to.
And Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly not going to defend the use of hotels as appropriate accommodation for asylum seekers for any length of time, so please don't interpret this well. Just going to speak about some of the things our sport and leisure officer at City Hall have done to provide opportunities for activities for asylum seekers in hotels and more broadly. So one thing we are offering is we're offering go for less discount access to Riverside Leisure Centre and the Northern Centre for all asylum seekers. I appreciate even on Go for Less rate that might be too much on asylum support, and there are issues with transport for those not living within those localities and those costs. That is one thing we are doing. One thing we have also done is we have secured some what's called Together funding from Sports England, and with that we've been running a weekly seven-side football looking for asylum hotel occupants at Football Development Centre in Beaufort on Wednesday evenings. Attendance is averaging between 15 and 30. We've been paying for a group called Headset Hearts, Club Headset Hearts, to provide fitness and yoga sessions for occupants in the hotel. We've got cricket sessions planned, and we've also purchased some sports equipment for informal use: footballs, goals, basketballs, basket nets, exercise mats. We've done some things within our budget to provide some sports activities and leisure access for asylum seekers. In addition to this, although it only applies to Ukrainian refugees, unfortunately, which aren't in the contingency hotels, Places Leisure, who manage Riverside Leisure Centre for us, are offering 3 months free membership of Riverside Leisure Centre for Ukrainian refugees as part of their corporate social responsibility. So there is that available for Ukrainian refugees.
That's really helpful, Councillor Giles. And can I just ask those from the groups in attendance, can you just raise your hand very quickly if any of that is news to you? Or were you already aware of all of that being...
Then we don't work with people, who are scientists.
Well, that's good to hear that you were already aware of a lot of that. So I'm just going to go to Ms. Ingham, and I don't know if Ms. Wynne, you were indicating on if I'll let you work out between you.
My question is about the Riverside, about the free membership is limited, and all of them, they come back and they said after I think 3 months it will stop. And for them it's like something really good because it's not far, they can walk. But if it can be extended until they get refugee status, because there is a lot of families and young men over there, they want to do exercise every time. It's really help them, but the problem is it's limited for them. Thank you.
Councillor Giles, I don't know if you want to respond to that or if you're taking that away to think about.
Unfortunately, I can't make any guarantee because the Riverside Leisure Centre is managed by Places Leisure, who are a national social enterprise on a concession contract with the council, so we don't run it directly. What we do offer after the 3 months is go for less access, which is not very, and that's available for all asylum seekers, and we don't means test it for asylum seekers in the way that we do for refugees or anyone else. For refugees or anyone else, they require to be on UC or the associated legacy benefits. We don't means test it for asylum seekers. It's a 50% discount at the Norman Centre, which we directly manage. I believe it's a slightly lower discount at Riverside. I would not say percentage.
Thank you, Councillor Giles, and I hope committee members don't mind me giving priority to some of our guests, but if there are any objections, please raise it as a point of order, because I don't want to be unfair to committee members. But Ms. Ibrahim.
Thank you so much for your comment. I just want to add something. I don't know if you are familiar that asylum seeker in the hotel, they just got £8 a week. And they cannot even afford for less. So is there anything we can do for that? Or thank you.
Councillor Giles, I'm going to abuse my authority as chair for a moment. Obviously we don't run Riverside Leisure Centre, we do run the Norman Centre. Is that something that any thought could be given to just to, I know you won't make any decisions now, but if you could take that away. So, who did I have? I had Councillor Galvin, Councillor Haynes, then Councillor Osborne.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you again for coming, giving up your time and being here. I can't really say how valuable it is to us to actually be in the room and be able to listen and talk with you about this, so we really all appreciate it. I just wanted to raise a couple of points. One around potentially having a group of people that we work with, perhaps it's one for City of Sanctuary to speak to as well, but whether you could see any merit in, because we're here now talking with you, this is the first really for me in this formal setting, but having what I noticed doesn't happen is an ongoing voice for people, refugees, migrants and asylum seekers within our organisations, and in some other groupings you have service users who have a forum where they can bring their ideas forward and then they're listened to. Would you see any merit in having, as part of perhaps the council sanctuary status, some kind of service user group? Have you seen that work, and would you be willing to help facilitate it? That's one question, and I had another question around asking if you have seen particular problems with issues around gatekeeping of health or access to health within services. I'm aware that we may have to pick that up through other forms of scrutiny, but it would be useful to have some thoughts around that here.
Is there anyone who'd like to give their thoughts from this side of the room? Yeah, Miss Wood.
Yeah, we'd have to discuss it on a steering group, but I think there would definitely be some merit in having a voice for asylum seekers to allow that continued dialogue with the council. Would it help? That's me.
I know a lot of asylum seekers, they don't have GPs and they don't have access to organ tests, which is quite difficult.
And Ms. Maramu, I don't know if I pronounced your name properly. Please correct me.
Thank you. In terms of having more regular contacts and more regular relationships, I guess, and especially with voices of service users, from Richard's point of view, would definitely be interested. And I think it would be really valuable to have individuals, our service users participating. And I guess it would be good to have, well, it depends, on the topic, but, or if we had themes or things like that, but I guess it would also be useful, I think, for the council to hear the voices of people who have been here longer, who have got full entitlement to, everything. So on paper, they should be doing perhaps okay, and often they are not. So I think it would be really interesting to have diverse voices within the diversity, of asylum seekers, refugees, and perhaps other migrants. So yeah, but maybe see understanding of city of sanctuary. So I think that would be a really useful conversation to have. And in terms of health, I just wanted to mention something from our experience at Norwich. So again, people who have, who are here, who have an address, who are registered with GP practices, but recently we've done much more work to actually get people's views and experiences on access to healthcare, whether it's physical health or mental health. When the walk-in centre was at risk, we did a survey with 65 service users, and we actually had to do our own survey because the survey that was out there for consultation was just not accessible really. More recently, a few days ago, we did some surveys with service users around the mental health well-being service, which is now up for consultation in terms of the recommissioning process. And again, what comes out really clearly is lack of accessibility, and it's not just language barrier, it's awareness of what's available, but also the service being responsive to people from different backgrounds, whether it's cultural or something else. So at the moment, and it's no surprise I'm sure, but our service users really struggle with getting appointments, face-to-face appointments, and we have very varied feedback in terms of access to interpreting for people who need interpreting. We have service users who say it's fine, I can get an interpreter when I need one, and we have some very shocking examples of people being told you can't make an appointment until you speak English, or you come back with someone who speaks English. That's just not acceptable. So yeah, it's a splashy picture, and again, this is for people who have status, who are registered in GP surgeries, and this is Norwich, in Norwich. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to, I've lost my list. Councillor Haynes.
I think someone else is turning mine off.
Councillor Sands, I think that's you. Yeah.
I learned something again. I wouldn't mind.
Go on, Councillor Haynes.
Thank you. When I was reading the appendix about the list of matters that came up at the cafe event, something that came up in there was the issues around ASB repairs and adaptations to council housing. And so I wanted to ask, I've got residents who are a bit, living most of their lives, that's English their first language, they still struggle occasionally to access the council's ASB reporting and repairs system. So I guess it's a question mostly for our guests really, about what do they think that council could change about its systems to make it easier for your service users to access the council services around ASB repairs.
Anyone got any thoughts based on any recent cases you've had?
I'm going to speak on behalf of everyone. So I work at Future Projects as well, so we deal with a lot of people in the NR5 area. And I have a gentleman, he's British, and he's in his 60s, and we've reported an ASB incident 5 times on the system and still not heard anything. So I can imagine, and I'm supporting him doing that, and he speaks English. So an asylum seeker or refugee or someone who's English not their first language, and he's going to find it very difficult to access the website or stay on the phone for potentially 3 hours, I think I've done before, and then actually get through to someone to speak to. I think it's going to be impossible, to be honest. And then to not even get a response, it's just frustrating and heartbreaking that something's really affecting your daily life. And that might be something tiny, but if it's going on consistently, then it's going to affect your mental health, physical health, and everything. So, making the website more accessible. I know that the just on Norfolk, they actually have a system on there where you can change the language. I don't know. Is it any good?
I don't know actually about just for Norfolk, but I think I'm right in saying the Norwich City Council website you can actually change the language, I think, but it really isn't user-friendly website.
And Google Translate, I believe.
Yeah. And we've actually raised concerns when, for example, when the My Account section was introduced, and we had so many service users who are on the home option system came to us and said, I don't know, I can't place any bids anymore, I don't know how to. So again, it's rather than empowering people, it's actually disempowering, people, and that sort of things. I think maybe the key point from our point of view is we should be working together. The council should engage with any organization really supporting people doing advocacy, because we have all this experience and we could, explain, okay, we think this is going to work, this will not work, or people need to be at least, kind of get their heads around this. So there is, I'm afraid, a lot of work on this just to pick up on the repairs team. I think at the moment, we have two households we're supporting, and one is around homelessness, and it's really difficult. It's really a terrible situation they're in. The other one is about repairs, a young single mom, and it's been going on for months. I submitted a formal complaint in December, never heard back. I've shared this with council officer and with Adam as well. So yes, I'm afraid repairs is we start thinking, oh my god, we're still on these repairs, the repairs seem to come around. I'm not optimistic as to how quickly that's going to be looked at, unfortunately.
And that's really awful for people, isn't it? So something I think, just to follow up on something I picked up on that you said it would be useful if we engage with you guys when we're designing changes to the website. And that seems like something we could perhaps formulate as a recommendation later if the rest of the committee is, we can leave that on consideration.
If that could be parked, but recorded, that would be really helpful. Yeah, brilliant. Right, so I am going to, apologies, I'm going to Councillor Osborne, then Councillor Carrington, and Councillor Chapman. Have you changed your mind?
No, I'm not there.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, sorry, and then Councillor Gavin. Didn't see you, Ben, apologies.
Thank you. And yeah, everything that you just said about the communication issue, the reporting, social behaviour, the repairs, etc. We get that all the time, unfortunately. It's not. It's a very common issue. So I guess I'm backing what you're saying in the need to address that. There was an effort to get this committee, the Scrutiny Committee, to look at how the council communicates. That hasn't happened. But I wonder if there is a recommendation in here, in that we can, as Councillor Haynes said, to sort of audit of how the council communicates with service users, and that can be just beyond sort of wider than just the website. It can be face-to-face communication as well, access for people who don't have digital access, and as what was saying, accessible, friendly communication so that people feel listened to. And I wonder if that's as much of what is anything, even if it takes a while to get repair done, it's really important that people feel that they are listened to. I don't know if that, if you sort of support with that. The other question I had was about community centres. So we talked about Riverside Leisure, but also there's the Norman Centre, there's other community centres which run activities I wonder if we can give sort of vouchers or some way of enabling asylum seekers and refugees to access those activities without having to pay for them.
Councillor Osborne, is that something directed towards Councillor Giles for your political response, or?
Response.
So in terms of the community centres, all the community centres are run by individual organisations. Many already do some activities. We can certainly, one thing that we can do is try and collect what those activities are, which are already there and ongoing. In terms of vouchers, that's something that we will have to go back to the community centres themselves and suggest. Quite a few of the associations are very aware of these sort of issues, and I suspect some will be quite favourable to that, but it's not our decision to make, so that's something we will take away and feedback.
Yeah, so could the council help with funding for this if needed?
I'm not aware of any funding streams that we've got that would particularly fit with that. We've got some small Get Involved grants, some Get Started grants, some Get Growing grants. So the organisations which are running the activities could apply for those in particular. I'm trying to think of any other notions that we've got. There could be Pledge Norwich funding as well, which has got to be linked to growth. I think there's a clear link at that point. That is a match fund. In terms of the turnaround times for this summer, I'm not sure that's really feasible, but something longer term, I think that could be some good funding issues there.
Max, could I ask if the Get Going funding stream, you mentioned that's something which some of the groups could potentially secure some money from to support the refugee community in Norwich. Is that, could you email across to the various groups some information about that? Because I'm sure they really appreciate that, or if you could share it with Alex, you might be happy to disseminate it amongst them.
Yeah, we're quite happy to. The Get Growing ones would have to come from the organisations running activities like the community centres themselves, because they're smaller. But certainly the Pledge Norwich side, that would really fit. So we could be useful, happy to share details around that.
Right, so I'm just looking at the time. We are going to be finishing at 6:30, no later. I am a stickler for rules, as a lot of you know. I'm going to suggest we might want about 45 minutes for the recommendations so we can properly discuss those. I can obviously prioritise more discussion time amongst councillors, and I have obviously prioritised some of our guests because I assume you wanted to hear mainly from them. Would we generally have consensus if I ask for all of the questions that we've got at the moment to be taken together, and then we look at recommendations, unless there's anybody who hasn't asked the question? I'm looking at Councillor Fox and Councillor Stutley, if you've got, and Councillor Thomas and Sands. Do you have anything burning? Councillor Harrington, I've got you as the first person I'll come to. If anybody hasn't asked a question, I will obviously prioritise those people, but I do want to try and take them as a relatively big round so that we can fit as much in and still have a good amount of time to discuss our recommendations. If everybody would generally be happy with that, that's how I'll move forwards. And if there are councillors who've not asked questions, please wave at me frantically. So I'm going to go to Councillor Carrington, and I'm just going to pause any responses and then go to Councillor Chapman. I'll probably prioritise Councillor Fox though. So we'll continue. Councillor Carrington.
Thank you. I just really wanted to ask our guests, particularly interested in your experiences of accessing the NHS Wellbeing Mental Health Services. And I know you spoke about it a little bit before, but in my experience, there's very, very few specialist services available for people who've experienced multiple traumatic events outside of their control, who are ready disempowered, and some of the services already provided in the NHS, when anyone can gain access to them, are very, very time limited and extremely long waiting lists for those specialist services. I'm wondering if that's something that your people are coming back to tell you, what your experience is of that.
So just before we go to your answer, if you just wanted to jot that question down, someone who might want to answer, and I'll go through a few councillors. So I want Councillor Fox next, and then I'll go in the order I saw others.
Yeah, there's kind of three things that are coming to my mind, really.
Just Councillor Fox, could you use the microphone just for
Yeah,
this social media stream?
Yeah, there's three things that are coming to my mind. One is I'm wondering if, like with the equipment facilities, whether the council has any access to equipment facilities that could be made available to people, so that that could be a thing. And then I'm wondering about, in Norwich, certainly sort of the people I speak to in my ward, they're a caring bunch for the most part. They're good folks. And I'm wondering whether the council can help sort of with the interface between, if somebody needs new jeans, there are people out there who would happily buy a pair of new jeans if they knew, what it was, and whether the council can help in any way to act as an interface between the people we represent and, people who might be able to help. And lastly, I just wondered whether you feel that everything's been covered, and if not, what are the things that you would like us to know that we haven't already spoken about? What are the recommendations you would make?
Cool. So I'm going to, obviously that would be good if Max and Councillor Giles, you could jot those down. Councillor Stutley, you've not asked anything so far.
No, I don't think I have a direct question, although I have a comment just to follow up from the discussion about repairs. I would suggest that those supporting people in the community do contact councillors in the wards where those people are expecting a repair, so that we know about it and we can follow it up on your behalf. And of course I would say that any member of the public as well seeking repairs. I don't have any direct questions, but I will be seeking some recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Stupid. So in the interest of time, I'm going to bump Councillor Chapman and Sands, because you have both asked a number of questions, but I do believe in gender balance, so I'm going to go to Councillor Galvin and Haynes, so that we are being as efficient as possible while being reasonably diverse. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you. Yes, so we're still on questions.
Yes.
Yes, this is the last questions really.
Yeah.
We haven't, and we're wrapping this up with the other ones because we haven't heard if there's any. There might be a bit more time needed for our guests to say things.
That's why I'm bumping people
yeah.
at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone's got anything burning, I think we have covered. We've got a set of 3 good recommendations forming, I think, out of this. That's already good to spend time formulating them. I really would just ask again what thoughts are around things that council can actually do better, so that we can address those first.
Okay. And Councillor Haynes, and then I'll go to our guests and Councillor Giles and Max for their responses.
Yeah, my questions come from reading the get another one of the appendices, it's responses to the questions raised by Councillor Galvin. And there was a particularly interesting question about can the community enabling team go into the hotels and conduct needs assessments, and where that's significant, there's probably a cost for that piece of work to the council, but it feels like something would be best done actually to go through the county council as well, where some of the services need to come from there. But is that something that would be useful to do? I personally think it would be. It feels like the best way to deal with this is not to deal with each individual area piecemeal, which is what it would be very easy to do before we make recommendations in a bit. But actually, overall, even though there's a cost to that piece of work, it would save time and money to ultimately do it as holistically as we can in one go and look at how these different issues interact. So I wonder if there's any thought had been put into whether we can do that feasibly, and if so, whether we could do it in association with the county council, bearing in mind some of the services that refuse and asylum seekers need to come from their end of control.
And Councillor Haynes, can I just ask, is that directed more to council or more to community groups?
I guess there's 2 elements to it. Is that something the community groups think is useful? And I saw nodding, so I'm going to take that as something that yes. And yeah, there's a question for the council there about whether that is considered a good use of resources. I said arguably I think it would be, because it would save time and resource in the long run.
So I'm going to throw over first of all to the refugee support groups to see if there's any responses you want to give to any of those questions. I've got Ms. Wynne and potentially Mr. Dowd, and then Ms. Humero. I'm going to let Ms. Wynne and Ms. Eagle then fight it out for who says what.
Thank you very much, and excuse me if I make mistakes in pronouncing the name. So I will answer the question raised by Councillor Fox about the facilities available. I think the schools would be one option, especially this summer. So if we make events for refugees, if we start from there, they have spare equipment, they can pay for spare facilities, so they can use to operate. About clothes, I think we received email from the council that this company is offering extra clothes or jeans or whatever to refugees, and that should be organized because we don't want to duplicate all work, because sometimes other new route shops can offer just to have more coordination in making sure that it's equal to everyone and everyone has access to that. And also about recommendations, suggestions, I would say, about how many refugees get their status weekly here in Norwich? How many, let's say? Do you have statistics? All right, maybe 5?
Yes.
Less than that. Okay, is there anyone from the council able to say, make a phone call, welcome here, we are welcoming you, so this is part of this campaign, welcoming refugees and asylum seekers. maybe giving them assurance that they will be looked after and they expect some problems, yeah, they will be supported. So this is one of the suggestions. The other suggestion can be, why don't we kind of offer asylum seekers some tickets, because we can, I think, £8 a week for moving around the city. So if we provide them until they get the decision, either they are become refugees or they go then to the worst scenario and then we've got more problems, and this should be also addressed. The other things about future meetings, because this meeting is really very valuable, and really we thank you from our hearts for giving this opportunity to us to share ideas and discuss things, and the solution starts from here. So if there are future meetings, and also not as me, but maybe my colleagues from the Red Cross, so everyone in the loop and they know what's happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, yeah, thank you for the comment by Councillor Sutley about how we can approach councillors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. So I'm going to go to the double act next, if you'd like.
Okay, so with regards to mental health, just quickly, so there is a service in the Rest with Dr. Hamid. I think is it bi-month? Is it every 2 weeks? Or is it, yeah, every month. So unfortunately, it's only every month, but it's a triage service for refugees and asylum seekers. But that's a lot of people for him to take on in, monthly. So I do feel that there is more support needed with regards to mental health. And just sort of overall answering quite a few questions, I just think everyone should cast their minds back to Ukraine and the effort that was put into all of those arriving from Ukraine. So I worked with a lot of Ukrainians when it first happened, and I still know that there is a weekly meeting, actually twice a week in the library, for Ukrainians that need support from council services. Every time we have a new arrival come over from Ukraine, they get a home visit from someone from the council. So I know that Ukraine came with funding, but the goodwill of Norwich was present there, definitely, when Ukraine happened. Library also took donations, and I know in the forum they were taking donations, brand new toys, brand new clothes, and I'm sure that Norwich would do that again for anyone from any country. So I just think that maybe people need to cast their minds back to what happened when Ukraine first happened, and maybe we could do that to welcome everyone.
I would just add to after welcoming you as a new refugee, that the communication about the housing, because a lot of when asylum seekers get their refugee status, they don't know Norwich and they don't know the housing system and things like that. They're just simplified, and as well to give them the choice that they can, because there's a lot of them, they got health problems, the house is not suited for them. We have someone with mental health put in area that's full of drugs, and it's so difficult. So give them the opportunity to know what the options they have, rather than just they're homeless and they need to get the first opportunity that's available at that moment. Yeah. And also, in my worry, as we start to see a lot of refugee status now, and is there any plan for housing or what the process is going to be? Because I think it's going to be a big crisis if we found a lot of people homeless. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Hammer.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really in complete agreement with Rasha and Sarah said in terms of the welcoming, simple gestures, simple things, and often I think Refugee Week, there topics around simple signs of welcome. There's really a lot to cover, but just to go back on the mental health and access to the well-being service, yeah, that is definitely an issue that we've raised around people needing mental health support who have multiple trauma or PTSD, things like that. So yes, that's something actually the well-being service doesn't really, cannot really help with. Yes, Dr. Hamid's clinic is a great thing. Unfortunately, they've got obviously very limited capacity. I wanted to mention St. Barnabas Counselling Centre. They're a not-for-profit counselling service, and they've been working with all of us to support asylum seekers and refugees, and even other vulnerable migrants who don't have can't afford private counselling, and yeah, it's been really positive. So there are things that can be done, and obviously it's capacity and funding for them as well. In terms of, I think just to go back to recommendations from us. I think a general one would be, there are organizations working at the time with services who are also willing to share their experiences. It can be, it can be difficult, challenging sometimes for people to have the time to, engage with, for example, mental services if they have 2 or 3 jobs and/or they have more time, but they're limited English. So sometimes it is difficult to find people who are, who have the time or the skills to engage with council services, but I'm sure we can get around that. But more generally speaking, and Russia, you mentioned the fact that we are at the moment seeing more people getting refugee status, which obviously is very good news. What we also know is as soon as someone's got refugee status, they suddenly have to get their head around the system that until then, was inaccessible to them because they didn't have any entitlement to that system. So it is a challenge, and recently at Norwich, I think we've helped 3 people with their universal credit application, for example, in the last 2-3 weeks. So we are seeing a new trend. So there is that. Obviously, the housing issue will come up because people are supposed to access social housing where they were asylum seekers. So the Norwich City Council should be their priority if they're not going anywhere else. But also, because we do a lot of welfare benefits advice, universal credit rollout will carry on and be accelerated towards the end of this year and then early next year. Again, people who have already entitlement to welfare benefits who were on the legacy benefits, that's going to be a real challenge, which also means the council benefits team, I don't know, but obviously they are all obviously is going to change if there are fewer people on legacy benefits. So again, in terms of forward looking, I think what I'm taking from this meeting is that, there is definitely opportunity to work more jointly together because we see people's experiences day in, day out, but also obviously at strategic level, we don't have that power and that, level of influence. So I think there's definitely room for more joint on that. But it's also to acknowledge that, things have really changed over the last 3 years with COVID, but also the fact that the home office policies have changed. For the better, for sure, from our point of view, and the statement. And, so again, there is need for more joint work, really.
Thank you very much. So, just to say, obviously, if there are any people who are refugees moving into any wards of any councillors here, we'd be very happy to give them a phone call. I hope I speak for the entire chamber here. and welcome them to the new place that they live in. So it's information you're more likely to have than us. So if you want to notify us, our emails are all on the website. Let us know. We will obviously extend the warmest welcome that we can. So I'm going to recommendations. For those guests who've joined us, I would ask you don't take part in this. Obviously, you are very welcome to stay and listen. If you want to leave, we won't be offended. But obviously, I just need to make sure we are in accordance with council rules. So I'm just going to say we've got 35 minutes. It would probably be best if we tried to get as many recommendations on the list as possible, and then had any debate and lengthy discussion if there was anything which was contentious, because I would hope we're all largely going to be on the same page if we're going to have some very nuanced differences in this part of the discussion. So I've got Councillor Galvin, and if anyone else wants to be considered, I'll come to them in a sec.
Thank you. So, hoping not to be mentioned to start with, we mentioned it before, is to get a list of questions to the people from the board and Serco teams and ask for written replies, and any councillors here who want to add to that list or don't think any of them are appropriate, we get to share that. So, the second one is
I think Fiona is just bringing up the recommendations, but that has been captured.
That's been captured. So I want to thank very much the organisations that have come here today and others that have been put into the process. And thank them for their work as frontline organisations. Really not an easy job in very difficult circumstances. And I think we probably could have a recommendation sort of deploring the hostile environment of this government, and that would be a separate one, and saying that it's not something that people in Norwich or Norwich City Council takes any part in, and we'll do everything we can to actually stand against that. We've got things in place to help in some small way to mitigate that deplorable approach. One of those things, the third recommendation would be, I think again we have discussed it, to set up a service users group as part of becoming a city of sanctuary council, or council of sanctuary, so a service users group facilitated and helped to be led by organisations. It may take a while to get going, but to make sure that voices are heard in an ongoing way with an action plan to address some of the issues that have been raised. But some of those particular issues will probably be raised as other recommendations. But I think the service users group is, it will, it might take a while to get going, and we'll have to approach it, as Beatrice said, it's difficult to find time and to find the right people, and there are language barriers and there are cultural barriers, but we need to address them because otherwise people aren't heard. So those are three to start with.
So I'm going to take the chair's privilege just a sec to add in a recommendation which, for myself, which would be that the equality, diversity and inclusion strategy is currently under review, I believe. I'd like part of that review to, the recommendation would be in that review to introduce a strand, to introduce as part of that strategy a refugee strand, so that we can start to incorporate a number of these other recommendations into one of our strategies, and it becomes part of a council strategy and policy. Right, I've got Councillor Osborne, then Sands, then Stupian.
Thank you. I guess the first one I recommend is community centres. So what I just say, I don't know exactly what the best wording of that recommendation would be, but something on engaging with community centres to make sure that activities are available for asylum and refugees and for the local neighbouring in whatever way that works best. There's been a lot of talk about communication. So I think how council communicates with service users, and do that as a review, essentially, how council communicates. Another is to pick up specific points that were raised. So, for example, make sure that there is face-to-face communication, make sure that the website review to be accessible, make sure that there's somebody you can call who moved in. I would actually recommend that Scrutiny looks at communication. This has been brought forward before, was rejected from the work programme, but I think it clearly is a really important issue. And I think there's a lot of work that Scrutiny can do working with service users, including the other people in NR5 that Sarah talks about, and people living in NR1 and NR3 and NR2. It's a big issue. So those would be my recommendations. So one is to refer some of this work to Scrutiny as a proper topic.
Just briefly, I don't think we can make recommendations to ourselves, so that might be something we as a committee just need to do at a later stage and have that discussion.
Yeah, if we agree, then we do that.
That will be discussed as part of work programme discussions, but that's probably not a recommendation in itself. But in any case, I'm going to Councillor Sanders because
on this leisure, so that we can, as Councillor Giles said, engage with this leisure and see if there's a way that we can extend that. Was it 3 months? To extend that.
Okay. So Councillor Sanders, and then I'll come to Scrutiny and Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not at all sure how to word this, but I think the recommendation somewhere along the lines asking for the business community through retail, commerce, manufacturing to become involved in some way, because it's in their long-term interests to support asylum seekers and refugees, especially if they get settled status and then are allowed to become more involved in the community. So if anyone's got any suggestions as to wording for this, I would appreciate it.
Perhaps asking the leader to write to the Business Improvement District to secure charitable donations and other things for the refugee community, and maybe that might be
not just charitable donations. I think a lot of business people have got professional expertise which they may be able to bring to bear in various ways as well. So I think that's important as well. So it's not just a question of going to them asking for charitable donations, which can make a lot of people feel good, but also asking if they have expertise that they can, and advice which they can put forward in any practical way.
So to develop an outreach programme with the Business Improvement District, for example.
Along those lines.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Harrington from Scrutiny.
Thank you. First of all, a question really to officers. I'm just wondering if you can clarify if councillors actually have access to in-chat, given that sometimes we find that we are potentially first point of contact for residents, people who might not understand the system, and if we don't have access, can that possibly be considered as a recommendation?
I'm not certain, so I'm sure you only could possibly look at phrasing a recommendation along the lines of to explore the potential of councillors to have access to and training on the in-chat system.
And Councillor Scrutiny.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to make a suggestion around communications and website in particular. And I think it's something that we can do immediately without having to have another debate, and that is to seek more intuitive content and methods for communicating across the board, actually, not just with asylum seekers, but working with partners who support asylum seekers to make sure that content is adequately provided. And more long term, looking for more intuitive ways of communicating across the site, working with experts in the field. And even including the use of AI, where so many have had a bad press recently, but actually if used in the right way, it could be very useful to us. Thank you.
And Councillor Fox.
Yeah, communication's come up so many times that I really don't want us to go away without that being on that form in some way. So I wondered whether, like a recommendation to conduct an audit, like where users are like informing that in some way could be put on that form. And also, you know, in this building we have lots of spaces that aren't used at certain times of the day. And I wonder whether, you know, if any of the organisations want to use those spaces, whether we could offer those spaces for free to people who are essentially doing the council's work.
So I'm just going to add in my own recommendation as well here, which is that where to recommend that Cabinet explores the potential for not just refugees, but for those with limited English, to book appointments in person when they turn up at City Hall. It shouldn't have to be booked through the website. It might be a different day, but they need to be able to book an appointment if they need to be seen in person. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, on that actually, the other day I saw someone who clearly just recently arrived in Norwich asking the police where they should go to get advice on their housing. The police said, oh, go to support. This was literally just outside. And I have to say that you're probably not going to be able to get anything and have to go to the website. It's quite, it just makes no sense that you're literally outside, you can't go to the building to get advice. I think just what the is to conduct user testing of the website with service users, because I think we also, what Professor Fox was saying, is an audit of communications. So it's not just the website, it's how the house communicates, and that's also, you know, the style and the tone of communication, making it more two-way and responsive. So again, I guess an audit of communications for council users, and that, as you said, it's not just for asylum takers and refugees, it's everyone really.
So it looks like we've got a good list of recommendations. I don't know if there are any additional recommendations. I'll come to Councillor Haynes in just a moment when I finish this thought. There are some minor amendments I'd like to suggest to some recommendations, but I'd like to get all the recommendations on the board first. So are there any additional recommendations? Councillor Haynes?
Yeah, the idea of going in, sending the community enabling team in association with the county council into the hotels to conduct sort of holistic what are the needs.
And Councillor Wright?
Just expanding on Councillor Haynes' point there, somehow recognising the fact that at least one of the hotels sits in Broadland District Council, so involving Broadland as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Chapman. Sorry, Chapman.
Champion. Thank you. I'm just concerned. I know that the snail's pace with which bureaucracy can occur, and I'm aware that there are children passing out from malnutrition, don't have play equipment, and I'm acutely aware that these are lovely recommendations, but I'm also aware that over the summer holiday that's not going to help any of the children. And it could be by the end of the year that any of them are implemented. I'd like some kind of timeline with which these can be implemented, and I'll be happy to work as the shadow to Councillor Giles to help them ensure that this timeline can be implemented.
And unfortunately, we're on the committee which recommends, not the committee which
well,
does.
that can be my recommendation for the record. I'd like to say that this is a matter of urgency, and whilst we go home today to nice comfy meals, There are people out there who are genuinely hungry, and if I was living on that kind of day, I would have severe mental health issues right now. And so I just want to really highlight the urgency with which, this is an issue.
So is your recommendation that we ask Cabinet to treat this as a matter of urgency?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not being difficult, I'm trying to help with wording. Councillor Fox, were there any additions?
Yeah, just on that note really, like a social media campaign would cost very little, and I wonder if the council could put something out on social media that addresses that immediately and ask for help immediately, because obviously we can't wait for a refugee week for help to come flooding in. It needs to be now. And perhaps we could put out an appeal, for all of these organisations for the support that these children need over the summer holidays.
So given the next Cabinet meeting is September, obviously we have some officers and the Cabinet members sitting in the room who might want to take that on board without it necessarily being a formal recommendation, just to speed up that process. Or would you want it as a formal recommendation?
As long as it happens, I don't mind. So if we could have some assurance that that would happen.
Looking over at officers and Cabinet member.
I think there's certainly things we could do from a comms perspective to improve awareness and improve engagement and support. Obviously our comms channels feature coverage on a huge range of issues that the council provides and issues facing residents in the city. But there's definitely posts we can do, article in the next edition of Citizen, etc.
Okay, thank you. Leah.
I also just want to give a bit of reassurance about the point raised by Councillor Champion and some of the agencies and some of the issues that are going on. Some of the reports reference the fact that on a fortnightly basis there are meetings with Serco onwards and representatives from key partner providers, so the council is represented at those meetings, and they are raising issues such as quality of food, volume of food at those meetings consistently, as well as quality of accommodation provided. I'm very happy to be back to our representatives at the meeting today, some of the things we've heard about, so we can continue to raise that and flag that and keep that messaging up as partners to hopefully see improvement.
That's helpful. So I'm going to go to Councillor Sands, but I really want to get into discussing some of the recommendations because time is ticking away. Councillor Osborne, I hope you can reflect on if it's absolutely necessary, but Councillor Sands.
Just with respect to what Leah just said, is it possible then to, at these meetings, question whether Home Office and Serco are actually providing adequate budgeting for feeding people and doing proper shopping to buy the right types of foods?
So if you could take that away.
That has been raised. It's raised when we went to some campaign reports, so we have raised it specifically with them. We've been given assurances, but we'll continue to provide that message and feedback.
Cool. And Councillor Osborne.
Just picking up on what Sarah said about the 2 weekly meetings with refugees from Ukraine, and I wonder if that, I think the recommendation that be extended or a similar permission be in place for people from other countries.
If you're happy for me to add explore funding streams, then I politically speaking would have no objections to it. But as chair, it can obviously go. So there are 2 very minor things that I'd like to suggest amendments for. And one of those was to Councillor Galvin's recommendations, which focused largely on essentially setting up a service user group, whereas I think the emphasis is the thing that I'd like to shift a little, which is essentially asking Cabinet to explore becoming a city of sanctuary, which would obviously have those added, not a city of sanctuary, becoming a council of sanctuary. And it's more about the slight emphasis change, because we want to be a council of sanctuary and do everything properly, not just the setting up of a service users group. And I don't know if you'd object to that, Councillor Gow.
No, I think it's great to explore being a council sanctuary with a service users group.
So it's more about just moving the council of sanctuary to be the proper main part, and then with a service users group, is my view. But yeah, if you're happy with that, yeah. Anybody else? I can't remember what the other amendment I had was. Does anyone have anything that they object to in any of these? Councillor Fox, you're objecting to something.
No, I just wondered about the wording, because it says that could include a service users group. I might prefer that to say that would include a service users group, that will include a service users group, because, you know, how can we dictate what people's needs are? I can't.
Any other thoughts on the wording of any of these? Anyone? Councillor Giles, you're obviously here as a cabinet member rather than a committee member with wording of these. I do recall one of these obviously being about, I think it's Councillor Haynes' suggestion that our teams, I can't remember which team off the top of my head, thank you, community enabling team, inspect inspect the, not the hospitals, inspect the hotels, which they don't have the qualifications, so I would have to object
I'm not
when we come to a vote.
asking them to inspect the accommodations, because I think if we inspected them, we'd be shocked and horrified, probably. I'm asking us to go in there, talk to the people staying in there, talk to groups working with them, and conduct a needs assessment, essentially. So it's not about us inspecting, it's about us going, what do you actually need from us as Norwich City Council? Similar to what we've done today, but I think that doing it that way as well would mean that we can pick on individual cases, that we can have a greater idea of explicitly what they need in more detail about some of these issues we've raised, for example, the communications issue, the housing issues, and just have that, it's basically a follow-up to this, but directly on site, officers talking to the people that are affected. It's a follow-up to this, it's not about inspections.
And Councillor Carrington and then Councillor Sands and Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. It's in relation to that recommendation, the one about the community enabling team going in. I do have some concerns around that, and that's about the overlapping or working potentially at cross purposes with work that people from abroad team do, because they do carry out quite comprehensive assessments. I don't really know how that potentially would impact on the relationships between City Council and the people from the abroad team. It could be fully incompetent.
I'm trying to cover that in that recommendation by saying work with the county council, because I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I want to do as much cross-working as we possibly can on this. I think I know why we haven't been able to get some refugees in here today perhaps, but I feel very much like we're talking about people rather than with them right now as well.
Councillor Sands, then Osborne, I think I had.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the sort of community enabling team, I'm wondering whether the Home Office will allow them access. The reason I ask this is because about 10 years ago I had some asylum seekers in my ward who came to me for help, and I was actually warned off by the Home Office from becoming involved, and we see some failed threats from the Home Office in relation to this, which brings me on to these same people are now got settled status in my ward, and they run an organisation called Society of Life, which people across the gender, you are aware of it, because they do some good stuff. They have a community cafe on the second and third Thursday of every month, which they do some absolutely lovely food.
And Councillor Osborne, then I'm going to check in. After Councillor Student, actually, I'll check in.
I think we can still ask a bit to see whether it's possible, you know, to second guess what the plan office would allow or not. I think the other question which I have noted is that the guests wouldn't be able to take part in this discussion, but I wanted to see if there was any, can we ask, sorry, it's a bit weird doing this, but can we ask if there's any comments from guests that if there's anything we've missed? I've had to
unfortunately, and I do have to look at the council constitution. It wouldn't be constitutional for guests to make recommendations, which is what you're asking for. Can we say?
Yeah, not making recommendations, but if there's any comments on wording of this or anything that we missed, that then council's going to recommend.
Is that okay? Okay, fine. That's fine. Sorry, I wasn't trying to exclude you, but I do need to make sure things are on top of it.
I don't want to undo your recommendations, but I would say, sorry, I so poor, Councillor Hayes. And my gut feel is that SACO won't let you go into the hotels for that kind of needs assessment. I don't believe they will, not at all, and I'll have a valid reason as to why you can't do that needs assessment. So they would argue that a health assessment is already done by youth reporting, and beyond that, you would be testing that. That's my gut feel.
Please, about the transportation for asylum seekers and refugees, and also about education, we forgot to mention their opportunities for asylum seekers or refugees.
So I appreciate a lot of those, and I think just to explain some of the role of this committee, we can only really make recommendations that this council has jurisdiction over. Unfortunately, we do not have jurisdiction over education or transport, not since 1974, and it's a great shame we no longer have jurisdiction over those things, which is why we've focused our recommendations on what we can do. So, Ms. Wynne.
Councillor Hayes, you're more than welcome to come and visit our service users to find out what they need. Sorry, is that allowed to say?
No, that's fine.
Okay, but maybe come to us or rather than going to them.
So I'm very conscious of time, and I'm going to call Councillor Stupey, then I'm going to address Councillor Haynes' final thing. So I'll come back to that, Councillor Stupey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding the recommendation to send our community enabling officers in and with view to the comments made by our visitors, it would seem that this is a county function that is already partially covered. But if we wanted to find out more about the needs of people within the hotels, it would be sensible to ensure that the county officers lead on it. And if we're going to keep that recommendation, we should have that within that recommendation, so that they lead and therefore are able to get access, so that we can find out more about what's going on in those hotels. Thank you.
So Councillor Sands, I'll come to you in just a second. I'm just tripping in my own thoughts. I think on Councillor Haynes' recommendation, it looks like it may be one of the only slightly contentious recommendations. I'd like to suggest a different recommendation so that we can still have the good work you're intending. And that is that we ask the leader of Norwich City Council, along with the appropriate officers, to invite the refugee community here so that we can speak with them directly, rather than it having to be based in the hotels.
I think that seems to be more in line with what guests have said, so I'm fine with that. It's what is going on that, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. So we're deleting Councillor Haynes' recommendation and replacing it with that which preserves the purpose of it. Councillor Sands, and we are within 5 minutes of finishing, I should say.
I was just going to say, we've got 2 county councillors here today, so if there are any questions that people would like to be put through scrutiny in county councils, they forward them to either us, or you can forward them to the chair of scrutiny.
And I would like to say that Leah's passed me a helpful note saying we could put a recommendation to for example, Cabinet to ask that county looks at, so they write to county to look at the education and transport issues that have been raised here. So that could be helpful. Councillor Osborne, because really must be one of the final comments.
Yes. I would, just on that point, I would rather go to the officers at scrutiny first, just politically. Is concerned dominated administration in council and county, and we would want to, if it comes from the city council, it's like
yeah, okay. And Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. On the rewritten Councillor Haynes' recommendation, absolutely support the notion of asking the leaders to work with me. In fact, I had a slightly impassioned plea directed to me as Lord Mayor to go and visit people in one of the hotels, one that's in Broadwood. So I wonder whether this is a slightly self-serving recommendation, whether we can ask the leader and the Lord Mayor to provide.
Absolutely. Sorry, I forgot about some of our civic functions also. So it looks like we have a long list of recommendations. I think a lot of the ones which were more contentious have been made, have been slightly altered. Yeah, are there any objections to any of these? And Leah, you seem to be.
I was only just suggesting to get around that technical issue of experiencing with county council, we could potentially write as acting chair of scrutiny to the chair of scrutiny at the county council to raise this work, and particularly the education transport issues, issues.
So yeah, that could be done, but obviously I don't know if we want to take on board Councillor Osborne's comments.
Could I talk to the officers first? Rather than it being...
So we need a decision about whether we scrap the recommendation or not. I think I'm going to make an executive decision and suggest we want something to happen. It might be, does the committee agree that scrapping that recommendation is preferable? Yeah? Yeah? Okay.
And then possibly if Councillor Osborne could think about the outcome of these discussions, we can then communicate that to the rest of the scrutiny committee and how we take it forward.
Is there any objective to business essentially? Because I'm going to have to call a 10-minute break and then go another hour if there is anything which is opposed on this. The normal council rules do apply to committee meetings, be aware. Does anyone object to any of the recommendations? No? Okay, in that case, they're uncontended and those are our recommendations. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Just so everyone's aware, this is the end of the meeting. It's just a